Are you looking to stay connected with the boys over on Beyond the Unknown? Well, check out Nicotina.net. There you can join the community under Beyond the Unknown and be able to interact with both Daniel and myself and get access to exclusive content only available on the community at www.nicotina.net. Join the community and be a part of the Beyond the Unknown team today. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Beyond the Unknown. I'm your host, Andre, and today we have a guest by the name of Amanda Stowers. You might know her as Amanda, the Bigfoot lady, on multiple social media platforms. And today she has not one, but two Bigfoot encounter stories that she'll be sharing with us today, and they are absolutely terrifying. Not only that, but she has a lot more information as she's an employee at the Expedition Bigfoot Museum in Georgia. And the stories that were shared in this episode were amazing. Guys, this is Beyond the Unknown.
Okay, we're live. We're ready when you are.
Hey, guys, good to be here.
All of a sudden, I catch something black in my peripheral.
What happened next?
And then it stands directly up. And by that, I mean on two legs.
And he said that once he did that, he could not see him anymore.
That's incredible.
What I saw looked like a cross between an animal and a human.
It really just kind of shakes it to the core.
Solid black, and it looks to be like it's home.
They saw something that didn't look like human. That sounds terrifying.
Everything good?
Yeah, everything sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So y'all are my first ones. I've got a new webcam and speakers mic.
Oh,
So
perfect. Nice.
Nice.
we were playing with it earlier, making sure everything's going to work. So
And thank you so much for coming on here, Amanda. It's a pleasure, to get to talk to you. And I know that, we've been talking about this for a few weeks now about trying to arrange this. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with Daniel and I about some of the stories that you wanted to share with us. And before we get to that, I just want to ask you, how does someone become an employee at a Bigfoot museum? Like, how does that happen?
sheer luck, honestly. That's the honest truth. Just divine intervention and sheer luck. I just happened to be in a position where they posted a position at the museum, and I live in the same area. I live in the same town, and I've already been visited to the museum a few times. And when I saw the position, I of course jumped all over it, and they picked me, and so I've been there ever since. I started in 2019. Unfortunately, The pandemic happened, and I had to leave for a couple of years because my hubby found work out of state. So I just come back a year and a half ago. So all in total, about 3 years I've been there at the museum, and I love it.
Awesome. Well, how much traction do you get in the museum? I mean, do you get a lot of people coming in there, or is it sporadic? Is it a weekend thing?
It's kind of sporadic, but definitely wide open. Right now we're entering into the summer season, so the whole area here in North Georgia has gotten to be very touristy. So we've got everybody coming up to the mountains for summer vacation. So we're already starting to see that in the museum as well. So we'll have kind of a slow spot once everybody goes back to school, but then it picks up really heavy during the holidays, and just kind of up and down. But I will say, from when I started in 2019 to now, it's night and day for the amount of people. What used to be like, oh my God, we're so busy, we'll never get any busier than this kind of day it was back then, is now just a normal ho-hum kind of day for work.
Oh, good. Nice.
So I'm so happy for David and Melinda to see how much the place has grown. It's really awesome.
That's great.
So what is it about Bigfoot? What was it about Bigfoot that made you say, you know what, I want to get a job there? Like, what was your fascination? Where did it start when it comes to Bigfoot?
For me, it was not necessarily just Bigfoot. I've always had a deep fascination with cryptids, the paranormal, fantasy, the idea and thoughts that there are still unknown things in this world. And of course, Bigfoot is kind of the hot topic. Growing up here in the North Georgia mountains, we've always heard stories of things that go bump in the night. And then I always loved Bigfoot, of course, from, the legend of Boggy Creek. I ended up having some personal experiences, which we can discuss, in my teenage years. And the fact, like I said, they opened up a Bigfoot museum in our area. I just, of course, jumped all over it. And I've always I don't know why, I've just always had a fascination with it. There's just this, I don't know what's the word that I'm looking for. Like I said, just this thought that, there is still things out there that are unknown, that are unexplained. It gives kind of a sense of wonder. It kind of, dulls down the reality of ho-hum of it that we get every day. There is something still to look forward to out there every day.
I think so. I mean, I definitely believe that there's something out there. I think that there are other creatures and species that are out there that we have not discovered. And so I think that, I agree that there is a bit of wonder that still exists in this world, especially in our oceans, deep in our forests, in areas in which people just can't get to. We talked to Yowie Dan in Australia, and there's an area of the Blue Mountains that people just can't even get to. It's so dense and it's treacherous. There's snakes, there's spiders, there's all kinds of things out there. So, as much as we have excavated in terms of like the overall geography of the planet, there's still so much, I think, that we haven't actually seen. And unless it comes onto the mainstream media, most people have no idea that these things really exist. But the thing is that there's so many eyewitness testimonies and encounters with things such as Sasquatch that, for me and for Daniel, I mean, there's no question that there's something out there that exists.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that people ask me all the time there in the museum is like, they first come, skeptics, of course, come in and it's like, so do you believe in all of this? What makes you think that there could be something to all this? I'm like, well, one, there's a 4,000 square foot building full of all your information. But secondly, for what you just said, there's so many people, not just in the United States, but all over the world who have had encounters with these beings. And whether it's in Australia or if it's in Russia or if it's here in the US or in Canada, it's all very similar in description, slightly different, just like somebody in China is going to look different than somebody in Finland or vice versa. These beings look a little bit different depending on where they are in the world, but they're all basically still this large, hairy, human-like hominoid or spiritual being or something to that effect. So there's got to be something to it.
Yeah, you would imagine so. Like so many, like the encounters keep coming. It's not like they're drying up or anything. People are still seeing Bigfoot around, Sasquatch, what have you, all over the place. And a lot of times people are coming out from and they're talking about encounters from the past that they finally decided to talk about. Which is really cool because I'm fascinated about stories from the 80s or the 90s, where the technology wasn't really there that we have nowadays, and to hear about these kind of encounters is a little bit more of, I wouldn't say primitive, but a little bit more raw.
Exactly.
So it's really cool that this stuff is still coming out and there's a lot of interest in it. I mean, like Andre said, like we're both really fascinated with the whole Bigfoot lore and how this creature exists in other countries, how there's other types of I don't know, I guess you want to say hominids that are out there that have been discovered over the past 10 to 15 years that kind of tie into different kind of species of this that might be somewhat of a distant cousin to each other. So it's really cool. Kind of back to the museum. What kind of stuff do you guys have there for people that come and visit? And are you allowed to tell us the name of the museum?
Yeah, I can talk to you about those things. And so the name.
No, I can't. I can't talk about it.
I can't tell you the name. You're just gonna have to GPS
It's classified. It's classified.
No, don't worry. There are some things that are classified and some things that I, of course, can't divulge. But working there day to day, I can divulge quite a bit and share things. I've experienced some of my personal day-to-day stuff, and I just brag all the time on David McCara, who is the owner of the museum. He definitely put his heart and soul into this, and that's one of the things that fascinates people when they come to the museum. They're like, I just, one guy put this all together, and they're like, this isn't like corporate owned, like Disney didn't do this or anything. It's like, no, just him. And so the name of the museum is Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum. And no, it does not have any affiliation with the TV show by the same name. We always tease that the Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum, is the original Expedition Bigfoot, because technically, as it is, it's been open since 2016 when David took a leap of faith and opened it up. He always had a deep fascination and love of those classic roadside attractions that you used to see back in the day. And of course, doing Bigfoot research for 40 plus years, he's had several encounters of his own. He's been involved in BFRO and all kinds of other investigations and things. And so he loves to share the knowledge that there is out there about these beings. And so he wanted to open up like a traveling museum, but it didn't work out. And so he came across this empty building that just literally happens to be on the side of the main highway right here in the fur fair of North Georgia. He jumped all over it, and now it's been open since 2016. So that's 8 years now. And like I said, it's outgrown the building there. It's really awesome. I don't think you could fit anything more in there, but he does surprise me. I'll come in every now and then. I'm like, was that map always there? Or was that newspaper article always there? Or did that just get added? I'm like, no, I think that's new.
Yeah, that's great.
But
that's
it's
great.
really, really cool. It gives you kind of, we tease your Bigfoot 101 without like giving the full detail. It gives you like, some tidbits of some of the Native American lore to let people know that, hey, this isn't just a recent phenomenon. This has been a phenomenon for a very, very long time. And then it talks, of course, about the footprint cast, some of the Yeti expeditions, some of the other local stuff, like here in the Southeast, in Florida and South Georgia, they have the swamp ape or the skunk ape. So he has a cool exhibit on that. Of course, the eyewitness testimonies, sightings maps. And then, of course, you got a giant Bigfoot replica inside, which is, fun fact, is actually built by a police officer who saw him.
Ooh,
and then you got, of course, audio stations where you get to listen to their language, the Sierra sound recordings. So that's one of my personal favorites. And that's one of the big ones that blew up on my TikTok for some reason.
Those are the coolest recordings, though. I mean, I love the
vocalization. They're amazing.
It is crazy.
Ron Moorhead's recording of the Sierra sounds. It's just like, it's almost it's too good to be true. You know what I mean? Like you're like this sounds so real. It has to be true. And then obviously, like, my mind wants it to be true. But I don't have any doubt that they're not real. I mean, I think those are real recordings. And the fact that they tried to talk back to them, which I thought was like, holy crap, what are you doing?
Right.
But they're so fascinating. And when you look at the different types of Sasquatch that have been existing throughout the world. I mean, we talk about the urine in China, or the Uren. Anyway, you know what I mean. The Yeti
I can't pronounce anything good either.
Yeah. I'm talking about piss. No, but the urine.
You ran.
You ran, whatever it's called.
I'm just messing with you. Go ahead.
Anyway, there's one in China. There's the Yeti. It's in the Himalayas. Obviously, there's the Yowie that is in Australia. And there's countless different names for this species that has been seen throughout the world. And I think really, if you ask me, what we're looking at is just a bipedal type of species that is a branch off of what we are. And I think that they are a species that has been able to exist much longer than a lot of the other species that have died off. And I think that they live in small numbers throughout the world, but overall they're related. And, we know that this is the kind of relation based on the fact that they have the same kind of structures. They make the same type of tree structures, maybe big or small. They have similar characteristics in how they act and the things that they do, or even like the, what do you call it? The bush type of encampments that they make. And they're
the nests.
the nests, and they're seen everywhere. They're seen all over the world. They're finding these things, and so like these things are actually they're doing things that other ones are doing in different parts of the world, and that's why I think that they are a species that just has not been found because they live in the deep parts of the world that humans just can't easily traverse or get to.
Or maybe it could be a subset of a human type that maybe never caught on to what we would call the modern world, and they live what would be more like what we would describe in our terminology like a caveman, that why their structures could all be very similar from one, because that's how they take care of it, and they would live out their life in the forest. But me personally, I think there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's just me.
I mean, it is interesting. Yeah, it is interesting that all the people we talk to, that have actually seen a Bigfoot, or the ones I've heard as well, is that they look human. There's a lot of human characteristics in the face that really makes you second guess, like what am I actually looking at? You've heard people say that it looks Native American. I've heard people say that it looks like someone from like Saudi Arabia, or like Arabic. I mean, it's really different, kind of depending on who you hear it from. But the idea that there's something out there that is very similar face structure wise to humans is really interesting, and I think that really should, and I don't know why it doesn't, but it should really make a big effort to find out. Let's get one on camera. I mean, you don't want to see one shot, but you want to see one like up close, and just kind of like find out what this actually does. We hear a lot of the characteristics that they have, potential tree knocking, throwing pebbles, and they can be very intimidating as well. So it's such a crazy topic to talk about because of how closely it's related to us humans.
Yeah, and then also in the same respect, like you said, you want people like not necessarily to go out and shoot one to prove that there's one there. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I personally feel that would be murder. But there, at the same time, it makes you wonder, why isn't there all these people going out there with cameras, and not necessarily citizens, I should say, but government entities or zoological scientific professional studies. Yes. People who have like big PhDs on there, why they are out in these like big groups trying to find them, although some of them are, but in a much smaller scale, on more of like a personal endeavors kind of scale. I should say.
It's also
so it definitely makes you wonder why they're not. There's got to be a reason to there, or like I said, something that we're not being allowed to know about.
Well, it's kind of like that misinformation, where it's like, let's create this to be more of a taboo and more of just like a, just a story, so that no one really takes it seriously. Because, I mean, how would that feel if it was announced that there's another species of a upright bipedal Bigfoot running around in the Pacific Northwest, running around in Georgia and Texas and Mississippi and New Orleans, and it's been seen all over the country.
Yeah, and it would make a political and logistical nightmare, because, think about it, you would have this new undisclosed endangered species. So then you would have to have, in what's the word I'm looking for, protected land for these beings to live on. Like, you have different areas where other endangered species, you can't mess with them in any kind of way. And then you have to look at it, it's like, well, is it human? Where is it going to start paying its taxes or not?
Yeah, right.
I don't say that jokingly, but that's the best way I can get it into words.
They're going to start taxing it.
The rumor is that that the government doesn't want to announce it because of the logging industry.
Yes, because there's a lot into that.
Yeah, if you identify that this is its home territory, they're going to want to ban logging in certain areas of the country. and that would affect the economy in a certain degree. So
Absolutely. Agree. I've heard that too.
Yeah, that could be it right there. But I mean, it's insane the amount of stories that you hear, and I know you have at least one, if not two, stories that you personally have an encounter with Bigfoot. Can you share those?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. So one of my first major encounter is more of your atypical one. The second one definitely gets more into the woo category, if you're familiar with that. For people who aren't familiar, I'll just say, so you have your kind of flesh and blood, which what we've been kind of talking about, where it's just a relic hominoid, a lost unknown human or lost unknown ape. And then you have the other camp, which is more woo, or like woo kind of sound. And that goes into more of the paranormal aspects or more spiritual aspects that goes into these beings. And that can also fall into any of your other categories, whether it's, ghost or UFOs and all of that other stuff. But anyhow, so my first experience, I would have been probably about 15 years old. And I was, growing up here in the North Georgia mountains, we didn't have a AC or a furnace. We just had wood heat and open windows for our air conditioning and heat. So I was, backwoods in it a little bit.
It's just a little hot. It's all right.
Anyhow, but I didn't know it about then. I would go to people's houses and freeze to death because I wasn't used to the air conditioning. So we were working that summer, my brother and I, helping our father cut up a piece of timber on the property that was going to be part of our firewood for the winter. And my uncle had just remarried, and so he had a new stepdaughter, so who was our new cousin. And little back history, my family on that particular property has been there for probably, as of now, about 200 years. And so some of the original settlers there had marked their name on a tree there on the property. So we referred to it as the carving tree because that's where everybody carved their name. And so my brother and I, we were taking a break, and we're like, hey, we should go and take our cousin over here to the carving tree. She's family now. Let's put her name on there. So we took a break and we walked across the hay field, and the hay was really tall. And I mentioned that for a reason coming up. And so we got to the tree line beside the creek where this tree was. And here in Southern Appalachia and throughout a lot of the Appalachian Mountains, although we're not very rocky like the Rocky Mountains, we do have a lot of large boulders that'll stick out of the sides of the mountains and stuff from the old glacial formations and just from where the mountains have deteriorated over millions of years. But anyway, this particular tree is super cool because it was this massive, massive tree that was growing up beside one of those rock outcrops. So it had a large area that was underneath this rock that grew up beside this tree that you could make a nest, you could camp under. It was really massive. And you could, where everybody carved their name was where you actually walked up on top of the rock to carve your name. And so I paint the picture because I was actually standing up on top of that rock at the moment. And I think I'd found my name and I was redigging it back in or something. And my brother and our cousin was down below me. So I had my back to the woods and they were down below me next to the creek into the hayfield. And all of a sudden my brother's like, hey, we got to go. And he starts walking. He's like, no, we'll go in a second. No, we got to go right now.
Are you looking to jumpstart your small business? Then check out PowerBrandSystems. They offer one platform that centralizes all of your social media interactions and pulls together all your reviews from either Facebook or Google. They even have plans in which they will handle all of your social media interactions to help boost your small business into the future. Guys, if you're looking to propel your small business, please check out PowerBrandSystems. Use the referral code in the description below when making your first purchase of PowerBrandSystems. And on top of that, use promo code 300POWER to save up to $300 on your first purchase of PowerBrandSystems. Propel your small business today.
And he actually takes off running. And I'm like, oh, snap. And like I said, all this happens within a few seconds. So I jump down real quick and run after him. I don't even know what's happening. I'm worried to myself, is it a bear? Is it a mountain lion? Because we obviously we have bears, and there's unsubstantiated reports of mountain lions in the area. So my brother, I was like, if he's seeing something, I'm not even going to try to look back. I'm just going to run. So as soon as we got to the tree line there with the hayfield, whatever was behind me, which I never saw, the most loud, god-awful roar, sound, scream, whatever you want to call it, came out from behind me. And it was so loud that it knocked me down to my knees to where I was covering up my ears. And as I was looking up, I saw my brother and my cousin running into the hayfield, and all the birds flying up out of the hay at the same time. And so that's what I have, is this visual image in my head of being hit by this cataclysmic sound, and seeing them and having to get back up and keep running and catch up with them. And I'm like, what was that? What is it? What the heck is going on? And my brother's like, I think it was freaking Bigfoot. Because we'd already seen movies and TV shows about it. And so we got up to my dad and to my uncle, and they saw us kids, they were like, saw we were all upset, and like, what's going on, y'all? And my brother says, I think we just saw Bigfoot, and they explained what just happened to us. And my dad and them, they just kind of look at each other and they laugh. It's like, oh, you kids done saw the booger, didn't you? Wait, what? Like, you could. So apparently I'd heard stories my entire life about a quote unquote booger that lived on that property. And I had always just had assumed that it was a ghost, because some people in Appalachia will use booger for Bigfoot. And for where I'm at here, or at least my family, we use it interchangeably for anything that we didn't know. You just watch out, the boogers will get you.
Right.
So anyway, so when they said that the booger, I'm like, wait, what are you talking? He's like, yeah, y'all just ran into the booger out there. And we went and told my grandmother that same night, who she had grew up on that property, and she had been the one who'd always told us, there was a booger on that property. And she's like, oh yeah, that was it. That was the thing. That's what your Uncle Kerm saw back in the 50s that, ran him off, and he never would go back up in there. So it was just one of those crazy things. But what is I didn't see the being. It was behind me. My brother, who was standing down below me, he actually saw it. And it was about 50 yards. Forgive me, I forget which measurement was behind me. So I didn't see it. But he said that it was kind of orangish brown in color. And it had its arm up on a tree, and it was leaning out to the side to where you could see, the shoulder and this part of the main part of the body and everything. And he said that, it was standing there just like a man, but just massive and covered in hair. And what scared him the most, besides the look that it was giving us of, hey, you're up in my living room, get out of here, was the red eyes that it had. And that's something that a lot of people who have Bigfoot encounters sometimes will describe. So I never went back out there. Unfortunately, that property did get subdivided, so I haven't been able to go back out there as much as I would like to, just to see it. But interesting thing is that I finally got to talk to my brother again. Life happened, and me and him both took different paths, and so we haven't really got to talk too much other than, hey, how are the kids and stuff. So we finally got to corner him at Christmas this year. And like, hey, look, I'm back working at the Bigfoot Museum, and, I'm obviously sharing our story with people. So I just want to make sure that I'm remembering all these details right, because I'm a stickler on like small details, making sure that, I don't miss anything, or I always worry that people are going to question me if I'm missing something or say something backwards. Anyway, so I said, one thing that I remember the most about that particular encounter was the roar, was how loud that was. Because, it nearly knocked me down to my knees because it was just so loud. Obviously, I was scared to death. He says, but you guys kept running. So did y'all hear that? You obviously saw it. So he's like, no, I never heard a thing. I just saw the thing. I told you we needed to go, and I just took off running. I never heard a darn thing.
Interesting.
So again, that is a little bit more on the woo side, but you do hear from a lot of other Bigfoot reporters and researchers about what they refer to as being zapped. So having relived this encounter with my over and over again with sharing it with different people, I finally come to terms that maybe that was what had happened to me, is that this thing shot off a thing of infrasound at me, since I was the last one in the row there running off. So I was the one that got hit by it. So that's one of the things I attribute to that's probably most likely what happened. I don't ever want it to happen again, because I have been to many different like rock shows. My husband's a big metalhead, so we've been to lots of metalhead. And it's just that all-encompassing speakers. They're hitting you in the chest. That's how loud that was, and it was just it was something.
One of the things too is that it sounds like it could also be a case where your brother was running and was so freaked out that like he really didn't hear anything, because of the fact that he may even been talking during that time, like run, and just doesn't really remember it. But the fact that it was loud enough to make you go down on your knees and kind of cover your ears, I think to me that really happened. I think they really did make an audible sound, and you fully experienced that. And you said you felt it like in your chest and your body, like
it's like it
reverberation
just came from behind me and just took me over like that. I'm such a visual person, so I'm really glad there's camera. Wow. It's hard to describe it sometimes without the visual of it.
And the detail about
nearly knocked
red
over.
Eyes.
Yes.
And I've heard that before, that some of them do have red eyes and also have a reddish color, a reddish brown color to their hair. I mean, that to me, that's a very common description. That color or black or I think white is another one as well.
White is just like with humans, we all have anything from a white to red to brownish black in that kind of spectrum hair colors. It's the same thing with these beings. They range in color. Even here in Georgia, we've had reports of white ones, and in Alabama they have the famous white thing. So that was a famous Bigfoot flap that took upon that name. So
is there any theories about? Is there any theories about the white colored Bigfoot, meaning that it's an elder or an older Bigfoot, or is it just kind of like just the color of its hair?
I've heard both. I've heard both that the ones that they've seen in white just look like you're an average adult would. It's still very muscular. It looks very healthy. It looks like he doesn't miss a meal or anything like that. And then I have seen I've seen actually witness sketches of one where it was an elder. It was white, and so it had very a lot of the facial wrinkles. It was actually missing some teeth. It looked geriatric in the witness description. So that one was really neat. So I've heard both. So I'm not sure if it could be just like a family trait, or if it is a natural thing. It could, like I said, it could be both, because I also have seen, and not me seen, but I've seen, witness sketches and things of them having different facial hair types. Like, some of them will have a little white goatee. Actually, take that back. The Raven in the museum, he has a little white goatee, and I've seen witness descriptions of them having full, face coverings of hair, and then some, it's just like a small mustache, or it's like almost Amish-like, where it doesn't cover up the face; it just comes off of the neck and then down. So it's pretty interesting.
And that could be similar to what we see in human beings. I mean, sometimes people grow like a full beard that starts here and goes all the way down, and some people just have a beard that's more on their neck, and then they don't have a lot of facial hair. So I think when it comes to the Sasquatch, I think based on their genetics, I think it just depends on which, what gets expressed in their development, and then basically that's how it is. They have a full face, full face with hair. They have very little hair on the face. I think it depends. Each one is a little bit different, and I think that's what makes them really unique, and that's what makes us unique. And I think that one of the things that human beings will do is, obviously based on our appearances, obviously that affects how we attract a mate, that affects our success in life. So with them, it might have a similar attribute in terms of their success in attracting another Bigfoot, or, their dominance, within their own, group or clan, or however you want to put it. But I think that even though you may get a difference in their face in terms of their hair, you get the similarities just with the size alone. That they're big, they're broad, they're tall. I've even heard rumors that or stories, I should say, that the females might actually be bigger than the males just because of what they have to do. So it's incredible to think about the differences that each one of them has with one another.
Right. Yeah, really crazy. What time of the day did you have that encounter?
It would have been midday, late afternoonish. I know that it would have been. It wasn't dark. It was we still had plenty of sunlight. I remember that because it was a bright day.
Yeah. How did that affect you after the encounter? Did it affect you where you didn't want to go out anymore, or did it have the reverse where like, I'm going to go out, I don't care what happens anymore? I mean, like,
a little of both. I was a little spooked for a little while, but growing up here in the woods, you kind of had no choice but to be outside, because we did have encounters with mountain lions coming around our house. The bears. It's just part of life in the woods. So you just kind of had to. I had to kind of just push it back and just let it go along with all the other weird and crazy things that I've experienced in my life, because I've had several other paranormal type stuff. I don't know if I'm just a conduit or what. So like I said, I just honestly just kind of filed it back and didn't really think about it too much. Me and my siblings talked about it for a while, but then once we graduated and moved on with life, it never really became a thing until later on in life. I'm watching YouTube videos about Bigfoot. I find it fun and interesting, and met a friend and we start talking about cryptids, and I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I may or may not have seen or heard one. Like, wait, what? So
yeah,
kind of comes back up in life later.
It's so crazy. I mean, even for your brother to say that he actually saw it, hanging from the tree with reddish eyes and the color of its hair. I don't think a bear would be hanging off a branch looking at you guys. I mean, maybe to balance itself, but I mean, you would be able to know if that was a bear or if it was trying to balance itself on a tree. You could,
if there's anybody who knows if it was a bear, it'd have been my brother. He'd already been bear hunting plenty of times, even at 12 years old.
Yeah.
And it had a mannish but ape type face. It didn't have a muzzle like a bear would have, or even like a dog man that people would describe like with a canine type face. It was very apish or mannish in description.
Wow.
The facial appearance, I think, is also something that it's just, we talked to Mike Bluler, who had an incredible encounter with a Bigfoot. And one of the things that he said was that, he had it where he was pointing his rifle directly at his face. And one of the things that he mentioned was that he could not pull the trigger because this thing looked too human. It looked like a living, thinking being, a person. And he felt like if I pull this trigger, I am killing somebody. I don't know what this thing is, but it's a person to some degree. And so, he had a picture. I don't even know if I have it on here still, but he had an AI recreation of it. And it looked very, very human, had very, very human characteristics. And I think that if there are hunters out there that encounter this thing, they feel the same thing. They see its face and it makes you second guess, like, is that a person or is that an animal? And I think that little bit of hesitation, makes them not shoot at it, because they're like, what if that is a person? I don't want to go to jail.
Exactly. And people have mentioned that all the time. A lot of the skeptics will be like, oh, why didn't they just shoot him? Or it's like, because for that exact reason, interesting, interesting synchronicity inside of the museum. One of the witnesses they encounters that they share is the one from Mike Woolley, which is in 1981 in Louisiana. And he described almost word for word what you just said. Even though unfortunately his encounter was a very aggressive encounter, he said the same thing. And as soon as he put it into his sights and he saw it, he said, it looked just like a man, except not. And he said, he saw the eyes. It was, what's the word I'm looking for? There was a more or less not a soul there almost.
Right.
He said it was just I just couldn't pull the trigger because something just wasn't right. I couldn't do it. It didn't feel right. But he still ended up having to run for his life, bless his heart. And he's unfortunately passed on.
Mhm.
But it's same thing. The gentleman that you just described, sorry, I haven't actually listened to that interview yet. Was probably recently, or I would say recently as in like the last 15 years or more.
It was actually the last 4 years, I want to say.
Oh, 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
I was taking a shot in the dark there.
Yeah, no, it's actually a really, it's an incredible encounter. If you check it out, it's I think it was two episodes ago that we had.
Episode 5 of season 2.
Episode 5, yeah. It was
Awesome.
it was an incredible encounter. It really just kind of shakes it to the core of your belief in Bigfoot and what a Bigfoot can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a little bit of everything that you can think about besides the woo.
Mm-hmm.
More of like the flesh and blood aspect of what the Bigfoot is, and it's an incredible encounter, and Mike does a great job explaining his encounter. It really puts it into your mind on what he was looking at. So it's incredible. Even hearing your story, I mean, that would freak me out big time. Hearing something that only you can hear, perhaps because your brother says he doesn't remember that, and
exactly. Yeah, he says, I have no remembering of hearing anything. I just remember running for my life.
Yeah, and there's theories out there that they can mind speak, and do other things like that. And I've had experiences where only I hear something, not necessarily in regards to Bigfoot, but just I only hear it, and I swear it's right next to me, and someone's talking something to my head, and there's no one there, and no one else hears it. So so there's obviously something about that, I really can't put my finger on it, but, I believe that there is something involved with these kind of creatures and some of the things that they can do, not necessarily on the woo side of things, but more of like on the natural side on what they can naturally do that we're just not used to. And
Exactly.
by you guys having an encounter, and I'm looking forward to your second encounter, is witnessing a Bigfoot is to me something that you were kind of one with the nature at that point, where it was the right time, and maybe you guys were in the right mind state where the encounter happened, because I don't think this creature just runs around downtown, downtown a big city and says what's up to people,
Yeah.
These are only encounters that happen, out in the woods, somewhere that there's no one there, people that live out there that are used to like the sounds of the forest, the sounds of nature, that I think a lot of those natural experiences and sounds that you might be used to, other folks are not. And there's a piece of that I think we've lost as humans, is that ability to kind of focus more on what's really out there, not necessarily what's on our phone.
Oh, 100% agree with you. Actually, we get that quite often here lately at the museum with a lot of the people coming up here and staying for vacations and rental cabins and things. They'll actually bring in recordings like, hey, we heard this on the porch last night, we're not sure what it is, and I'll listen to it, or David will listen to it. It might just be a bobcat or a fox, or even just a squirrel. They make some crazy noises too, but
Mhm.
You know, the people aren't as in tune with some of these natural noises anymore as what they would have been even as short as, 50 to 70 years ago.
Yep. Yep.
One of the crazy aspects when it comes to these Bigfoot encounters is that I've heard a lot of people talk about that as the encounter is taking place or right before they realize that, they're about to set eyes on a Bigfoot or about to experience the encounter, that everything becomes very silent, that
Hmm.
the forest is completely quiet, birds and everything. And so it kind of makes me wonder if they are a type of creature that when they come into an area, even nature knows that, this is like the king of the jungle. In this case,
Hmm.
it's like the king of the forest, and so they just stop making noise because they're like, one of them is here. I think when it comes to human beings, most birds, especially, are so used to seeing human beings in their everyday life because there's a lot of us, and they can travel and they can fly, and humans really don't scare birds all that much unless you come at it, they'll just fly away. But I
Right.
think that when these guys come around, that they sense them. And I think similar to how a dog or an animal can sense fear in a person. If you have an encounter with an animal and you start to freak out, they can sense that fear. They can sense that tension in your body. And I think that they can sense that kind of feeling in a Bigfoot if he comes into the area and he's not happy or he's curious or he's wondering what are they doing here. They can kind of sense that feeling, and maybe it's a part of that what's it called, infrasound, that you were talking about,
Hmm.
which it might have, some kind of sense of that it puts out that the animals in the forest kind of pick up on.
Everybody quiet, nobody move,
Yeah,
and
the boss is here. Like,
Yeah.
basically, yeah. Yeah, interesting thing, I was actually watching earlier today a video of these people who rescue deer, and it was a mom and a young fawn. And as the caretaker was coming and approaching it, I guess she approached too fast, so the mom, made a huffing noise and then shot off and away. And the fawn had actually seen the caretaker prior, but as soon as the mom made that huffing noise, the fawn immediately fell right on the ground and just was perfectly still. No ear twitches, no anything. It's like it knew instantly as soon as that mom made that signal exactly what to do and how not to move
Yeah.
and
mhm.
hide from a predator per se. And so again, I 100% would agree with what you just said there, Andre. Yeah, I think whenever they do show up, sometimes depending on their what kind of presence they're putting out there, nature knows to bow in reverence, more or less. Like you said, the
Yeah.
king is here.
Are you looking to jumpstart your small business? Then check out PowerBrandSystems. They offer one platform that centralizes all of your social media interactions and pulls together all your reviews from either Facebook or Google. They even have plans in which they will handle all of your social media interactions to help boost your small business into the future. Guys, if you're looking to propel your small business, please check out PowerBrandSystems. Use the referral code in the description below when making your first purchase of PowerBrandSystems. And on top of that, use promo code 300POWER to save up to $300 on your first purchase of PowerBrandSystems. Propel your small business today.
It's interesting because it's almost like the opposite of what you see like in Africa, where like if there's a lion cruising through and there's monkeys will let out a sound as the alarm.
Hmm.
Like the baboons, they'll let
Yeah.
out sounds and
To warn the others.
Yeah, to warn the others, and they do that even, I believe, with bears and mountain lions. So they'll let out sounds, like the birds will let out sounds like, oh, there's one around,
Hmm.
and so everyone knows, oh, take off, and the hunt is spoiled. So it is pretty crazy how things just go quiet. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I
Very
mean,
creepy.
Yeah.
hunters have talked about how it goes quiet, the birds stop chirping, and it's just nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't know that's a case of they're hyper focusing on listening for a certain sound, or they're hyper focused on just the presence of of a Bigfoot. but I find it fascinating that like you hear that in a lot of different encounters, that everything gets quiet. And
Mhm.
obviously they talk about the smell, that they stink really bad, they smell really bad. And last week we had a chance to talk with Darcy Weir. He's a director and producer of multiple documentaries. He's done Bigfoot documentaries. He's done alien UFO documentaries. And one of the things he talked about was, we were talking about a case that happened in Virginia, Brazil, where these extraterrestrials, put off the smell, the sulfuric smell. And everybody said, "Oh, it smelled so bad. They smelled so bad." And it makes me wonder if when it comes to Bigfoot, if they put out a smell when humans are around as a way of saying to ward off any kind of threat or predators for that matter. Dogs have anal glands that they don't even
Mhm.
use anymore, but they still have them, and because back when dogs were wild, they could release those anal glands, which is a horrible smell, and
Awful.
that would that would help keep predators away from them, because similar to a skunk, or they can put out a smell and you go, "God, what is that smell? Let's get out of here." Or if you're a predator, you're like, "Oh, I don't even want to touch you. Let's get out of here." So maybe in fact that these Bigfoot, these Sasquatches are able to put out some kind of smell, some pheromone that makes everyone go, "Oh, let's get out of here. What is that smell?" And then immediately it takes over the situation.
Yeah. However, I would say if I lived in the woods all my life, I'd be a stinky dude.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with no soap.
Obviously,
Yeah,
No
big
no
time, big time.
shampoo. Boy, you don't want to be
Yeah, I
around
use
me.
that analogy with the children all the time when I was like, and then down in Florida, they call it the skunk ape. You want to know why? Because if you were big and hairy and you lived in the swamp all day long, you'd smell pretty bad too, right?
Yeah,
They're
you
like,
Yeah,
oh,
would.
high
Yeah,
yeah.
you would.
humidity, like, oh,
Oh
he
boy.
can't help it, man. He's like, man, no one's helped me out with this.
It's like, yeah, have you ever been outside in the summer in the South? It's
Yeah,
not fun.
exactly. He's like, there's no showers. I
There's
jumped
no
in the
axe.
swamp. Yeah,
Oh, God.
there's no Dr. Squatch.
No. Well,
Go ahead, Daniel.
no, I was gonna say, Amanda, if you can talk about your second encounter, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, let's hear
You're
it.
all ears. Okay, yeah. So my second encounter, I'll be 100% honest. I'm not sure if it was Bigfoot or not. I still don't know to this day. I just know what it was that I experienced. So I attribute it to that just because of the physical appearance of this thing. So I was at my parents' house probably around the same time as the Bigfoot encounter that I just talked to y'all about. During that, I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse, but around that time of my life, I was experiencing quite a lot of paranormal activity in my life. So I lose track of time as to exactly what it was. But anyhow, I was at my parents' house, and not only was I, but my brothers and I and the neighbor kids were all playing in our driveway. We had a rather long driveway. And at the end of the driveway, where we actually stood and waited for the bus during the week, we had like a little play area there where we would prop up our bikes and hang out in the woods,
Mhm.
and the boys would do what boys do in the woods and build things and dig holes and stuff. But I knew this was in the fall because I remember very vividly that the leaves had freshly fell on the ground, so everything was extra crunchy with the leaves.
Mhm.
And again, my brothers had jumped down onto the driveway and was getting onto their bikes. And I hear a very, very loud crunching noise coming up from behind me, like something was running up really fast, coming up real fast. And as I turn around, I look, and there's this being laying on the ground facing me directly. I mean, and it's really close. It had to have been maybe, what is that, 10 feet from me. And it was laying down with its head down, arms outstretched. But was the spookiest thing about it was that it had its mouth open. So I've always just kind of called this thing the bearskin rug creature, because that's what it reminded me of, is how it was laying there flat on the ground with its mouth open and arms stretched. But what was the most bizarre thing, looking back on it, is that I could only see from the hips forward. So from the hips back, where its legs and buttocks or area, what its back end would have been, I couldn't see. It was perfectly blended in with the leaves. Like it was half visible, half not. And it didn't make any sound that I could remember hearing. It was just more of a, oh my God, what is that? And I hear my brothers go, Amanda. And I look back at them and I look back over where this thing was. It's gone. It's not there.
Just that quick.
Just that quick.
Wow, and that could have been the case too, where it was running up on you. It tried to lay down, which we've heard before.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
a tactic they use, is laying down and blending in with the environment.
Mhm.
And it could be a case where it was going to do that. You turned around, it made eye contact with you, and so it showed. It opened its mouth and showed its teeth as essentially it's kind of like kind of like you had caught it in mid movement.
Yeah, or like it was in the process, and as it was coming out, it just froze in that exact position, just as it was coming down. Because
either way, you would stop and go.
Stories about these things, like I said, when they're walking or when they freeze, and they don't move, and they're in these weird positions. So that is a possibility. I actually haven't thought of that before.
It probably froze because you made eye contact with it, and then the moment you looked away, it probably buried its face into the ground, and then it was completely camouflaged. So when you look back, you're like, "Oh, it's gone," because you couldn't even see its legs. So by the time you look away and look back, it's already blended in with the leaves. And I bet if you'd have went over there and started feeling around, he probably would have been there like, "Hey." But I mean, I'm glad you didn't, though. That would have been scary as hell.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah,
that would have been a good idea.
Well, we had a story from Matt Knapp, the host of Bigfoot Crossroads, where he was walking down a path and he kept hearing a noise next to this log that was running along the pathway. And then when he went around to the other side, he saw a patch of dead grass but nothing else there. And for a moment, he thought, I feel like I should go touch that grass. And he was like, nah, whatever. And he left. And then when he came back with his friend, that patch of dead grass was gone.
Oh,
and
wow.
So he believes that it was laying there up against the log, camouflaging itself. And when he came back, when he left, it took off. And so by the time he came back, it was gone.
That is cool. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to look his up and listen to that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
What was the other story you had, Daniel? I think it was Daryl Wilson, right?
Yeah, Daryl Wilson up in Alaska. Him and his son were fishing on a boat. I don't know what river it was on, but his son saw the Bigfoot up on the hillside, and they took a closer look at it, and he saw that the Bigfoot put its hands up and laid into the grass, and when it did that, it literally just disappeared. And he could not see it anymore. It wasn't until a few minutes later when it actually stood up, and then it walked back up the hill where they can see it, from the back of it. Did you get a chance to see any like facial besides the mouth? Did you see anything else with the face or anything like that?
The only thing I really remember, and I've tried to dig it up and draw it and things like that, I don't really remember a nose, like a prominent nose or anything. So I don't know if because the mouth was so open, I don't remember seeing like nostrils or anything. But I do remember a very prominent brow ridge, and the eyes were reddish in color, but not like glowing red, like a marble or anything kind of color. So it was like black and red, if you could make that out at the same time. It was really weird. Yeah. I don't remember like pupils or anything, just like really dark beady eyes under those big brow ridges.
And that makes sense, because a lot of the encounters that you hear about the Bigfoot having like black eyes, very dark colored eyes where you can't see pupils, you can't see any white in their eyes.
Like a shark.
Like a shark, where it's just really dark. And, and we've heard them talk about showing their teeth, and a lot of the people that we've talked to, they don't have fangs. They have more like human type teeth where, they don't have these giant, canines coming out at you. where it's just more of a natural kind of mouth, similar to like a horse. They said like teeth that big, that just kind of eat on whatever they want, really. But it is a really interesting encounter because it happened in the same area. Is that right?
Yeah, it would have been maybe no more than like 10 miles as the crow flies from where my parents' house was to the property where we were chopping firewood at.
Yeah, that's well within the range of any large primate's territory, probably, especially one that it might be more nomadic rather than I'm just going to stick around here for the rest of my life.
Right.
A lot of these Bigfoot, especially up in Washington, you'll hear about them building nests and then leaving, and that's it. You don't see them back. So, I think there's a lot of that where they follow the food. They follow like the big game, either elk or deer, and if they're not around, they'll just move to where they are because they got to survive too.
Exactly. Pause for 2 seconds. I need to plug my laptop in. I just
go for it. Yeah, go for it. Get the power.
No, I really think that
trying to find a good parking spot for you.
Boy, it's hot in this garage. I'll tell you that.
I have my air conditioner on
I got a fan going, but still, it's like, oh my god!
I have air conditioner and then a fan right here that blows right on me.
I
had the AC off earlier, and then at one point it started to get humid in here. I was like, all right, I got.
It's warm here too, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in we're both of us are in Northern California, where it's not nearly as humid as it is in Georgia. I'll tell you that. So we're definitely lucky. To deal with the high humidity. Yeah. That can just. I have a buddy of mine who lives in Texas, in Houston, Texas, and it's super humid down there because he's closer to the Gulf of Mexico, and he was like, "Oh man, it's just brutal." And it makes you wonder too, like when we talk about like the Yowie, right? That was in Australia, and a lot of times the description of the Yowie is it's skinnier, kind of lankier, but still has that broad shoulder look. But some of them have this kind of like lankier look, and makes you wonder if their environment kind of dictates that over time. That like instead of being this big, bulky, like huge guy, like you see in the Pacific Northwest and Colorado, that sometimes their environment will change their look to give them a look and feel that is more natural to their native environment. But in both these stories, which I think are both completely just fascinating encounters, is that for one, your brother saw it, saw the eyes, saw it hanging from a branch that typically I don't see bears do. And so, and I say bear because that's the first thing anyone ever says is, oh, it was probably a bear.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And,
Sorry.
What?
I was going to say, you brought up an interesting thing there about, the different physical descriptions depending on where they are, because actually talking about bears. So down here we have black bears, which are quite small in comparison to grizzly bears up in the Rockies. And then they're even smaller than polar bears, which are up in the Arctic. And so it's very, very similar in description here. Like, even same thing with like deer. Deer are much smaller. The moose, they're much bigger the further north you go. So same descriptions with some of these beings here in the South. They're a lot leaner and a lot more lanky. And then, in the Pacific Northwest is there where you get more of like the Patty one from Patterson Gimlin, a lot more broad chest, a lot more barrel chested and taller. And then up in Alaska, we've had reports of some even as tall as 12 to 14 feet, just based off the footprint size alone. So same thing, definitely where I think the geographical location and environment plays a lot to do with the physicality of them as well.
Yeah. And it's amazing, like you hear people that have witnessed it. And in Australia, Yowie Dan did a measurement on some footage that he had that we have on that podcast, where you see it walk away, and they went back up there and did some measurements on where it was, and they estimate that it was close to 12 feet tall, which is a giant. I mean,
That
that
is
is
huge.
a massive creature running around down there. And then, even in Australia, they talk about, I'm going to say it wrong, but the dungaree. Is that right, Andre?
The Junjidi.
The Junjidi, the Junjidi, which is a smaller type of hominoid that that is running around that country as well throughout the Blue Mountains,
and about 4 feet tall.
Yeah, about 4 feet tall. And I think it was maybe 15, maybe 20 years ago, they found these hobbits on one of the islands in, I believe, in Indonesia. Was it, Andre? New Guinea. And New Guinea is just north of Australia. And there was a time during the Ice Age where there was a landmass where, the water seceded or froze up in a certain area, but I think it was just lowered, where probably these guys moseyed on down to Australia, and now they're living out a very secluded kind of life down there. So yeah, it's interesting, all this stuff. I mean, your encounters were that second one would have really freaked me out if I looked over.
That would have been terrifying. I would have been like, oh my God.
But
it was pretty freaky for sure. Like I said, filed that one back more than I did the first one into the back of my brain. And it actually wasn't until I started working at the Bigfoot Museum that I really remembered that experience. Like I always kind of questioned, like, was it just a dream? Right. Did I really see it? And I started hearing other people's stories. And for whatever reason, it was like a repressed memory or something. It came back to me in like full vision form. Like I was having nightmares of it for a few weeks, just like that's all I could see was this thing in my every waking moment. It was just terrifying.
Well, crazy. I think that when people see things that cause them any form of trauma, and this could be trauma in the sense that when you saw it, you were terrified, and so it freaked you out so bad that your mind almost kind of repressed it to a degree because it was trying to protect itself. It was trying to protect you. Thinking back to that encounter, do you remember any details about its teeth? Like, were they big? Were they flat? Were they like horse teeth? And do you remember any details about like its brow ridge or its nose or anything?
Or how big the mouth was?
I just remember that was one of the most prominent things about it was the mouth and like how wide open it was, like, really, really wide. But I could still see where, even though the mouth was open, it was looking over it. So again, I don't know if maybe the lips was up too high or something, but I don't really remember a very prominent nose. So it was either a very, very small, squished, flat nose, or the lip part of it just covered it up. But
blocking it,
yeah. But the eyes were looking directly at me. They wasn't like looking over like cheekbones or anything like that. They were looking straight forward. And the brow ridge did have shape to it. It wasn't like just a straight flat across. There was a shape to it, even though I don't remember like eyebrows or anything like that. So it wasn't like a big unibrow, but it was definitely a skin flesh, but like almost very cavemanish, for lack of a better word. A very prominent brow ridge there. And I don't remember like a sagittal crest or anything, but I do remember the hair starting on the forehead and then running on back down the rest of his back. I don't remember the hair on the head and on its body. From what I remember, what I could see anyways, was all more or less the same length. I know I've heard other people make descriptions where they've seen things, like sometimes they'll have longer hair or on the head than it does on the body, or if it's almost like a lion's mane kind of effect where it stops at the shoulders and then gets really short. But then I also hear other people describe what I've just described, where it's the same length all over. So again, probably just unique to whatever whoever that individual was.
Right. Yeah, and I think even Mike Bluler talked about how it had like rocker hair, like old big hair, kind of like from the 80s, like this big hair, where it was like a rocker kind of hair. I forgot his exact terms, but you kind of get what
Motley Crue.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like this giant head of hair that was just, it really started just above the brow ridge and just went all the way back, and then boom, and there's some interesting footage out there right now. If it's just coming up online, where you see a Sasquatch in a taped off area tearing trees out, and you can kind of see its face a little bit, and you see a lot of hair, not like a Chewbacca kind of hair, but it's just like a big mane almost. So it is interesting. I completely believe you. I think what you saw was a Bigfoot, and you caught it right when it was just checking you out. And if you look up chimps, and when chimps show teeth like that, it's a form of they're anxious, or they're not being aggressive. So maybe you saw one that was actually not being aggressive to you, showing you its teeth, and kind of like, I'm just wondering what I'm looking at as well. So it is
possibility.
It is interesting, yeah.
Because it sounds like you caught it as it was, because it ran up and was trying to like get to that open area to lay down, and then you caught it right before he put his head down. He was just like, ah, and he just sort of did a reaction that was just like, hopefully this works. And it was enough to make you go, what in the hell am I looking at? And then you turn around, you come back, and he's just buried his face, and he's totally camouflaged.
Yeah. I've always had the feeling to me that it wasn't necessarily friendly per se. Like you said, I do feel that I did catch it as it was up and coming down. So I don't know. Hopefully it wasn't trying to snatch me or anything like that. But I never did have like I just caught you kind of feeling. It was definitely like oh no, that's not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. This is, I just never had a very good feeling about it.
Man, that's such a crazy story. Both of them are just is incredible. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing these stories with us. I really appreciate you talking to us, and really it's like at the Bigfoot Museum, the Bigfoot Expedition Bigfoot Museum,
correct,
in Georgia. What is the most common trait that you hear about most of these Bigfoot stories? What is the most common thing that you hear? Is it tree knocks? Is it the smell? Is it footprints? What is it?
Oh, gracious. The most common thing, honestly, is just people seeing them. It's about 50-50 as far as most people, it would be, they've heard one while they were out hunting, or they heard one, from their property up there. But a good portion of the people, when they're sharing anything with us there at the museum, it's a full visual encounter of these beings, whether it's, just them crossing the road in front of their car, they saw it while they were out hunting or camping or anything like that. So it's not necessarily one or the other. I wouldn't necessarily put, one percentage over the other. It's
just kind of, it's all over. There was an interesting encounter that I listened to recently where there was a truck driver driving a water tank, truck. And he was getting ready to go up an incline, and he looked over to his left, and he saw two upright beings about 50 yards away. One of them tall, one of them shorter. So he assumed that was a youth. And he said that the taller one, he looked at it and he can tell that it was a female. And the little one next to him got aggressive. And he saw the female say something to the younger one, and it stopped. And then he looked in his rear view, his side mirror, and there was the largest Sasquatch out of the three, carrying an elk over its shoulder, coming down from the hillside. And when he looked and laid eyes on it, it dropped the elk, and it started coming after him in the truck. And he put the truck in gear, and those trucks take a minute to get up to speed. And he said that the Sasquatch came up behind him and punched the tank. And when he got back to the property, there was a dent on that water tank. And he was embarrassed to tell anybody about what he saw, because he didn't want to get ridiculed about it, he didn't want to sound like someone that's making up stories.
Oh yeah.
So,
That's
so
one of the worst things about this is that people are always, so worried about ridicule, and then that people do even get ridiculed from this.
Yeah.
And our owner will talk about it quite often, back in the 60s and 70s, when the Patty film came out and they were having all these documentaries about these things, especially in the Florida, they were always talking about the skunk ape on the news. And then all of a sudden it just became really hush hush. Like, oh, you're just that crazy person who saw something. Oh, that's not what you saw. All of a sudden it became this very taboo thing, and people were very much ridiculed about it. Same thing with a lot of like UFO kind of stuff. Oh, you're the crazy person who saw UFOs. What were you smoking that night, or what were you drinking that night? And we get that quite often at the museum.
Yeah.
People will come in and they'll realize that, oh, this isn't a something here to make fun of it. It is a very serious place. They're presenting the information for what it is. And then people will come up to the counter afterwards and they'll look at me and go, so what do you think about all this? And I was like, well, I've had personal encounters of my own. I, hear so many stories all the time. I definitely think that, there's something to it. I'll, chat up conversation. And then they'll realize, kind of like, almost like they're kind of feeling me out. And then they're like, okay, well, I wasn't going to say anything, but
here it comes.
Here it comes. Or you might even catch, just some body language from somebody, as you're coming in, because it is an attraction. So as people are coming in to the museum, we kind of do like a road attraction kind of speech before you come in. Welcome to the museum. If you go into this room, you're going to see the skunk ape exhibit in the DNA lab, and if you go over here, you'll see their, the theater and that kind of thing. Excuse me. And so I'll be doing that with the people, and I just kind of catch the way that a body language thing that they'll do, or they'll he's like, oh, you have their language in here, huh? Like, yeah. Like, and I just kind of watch it as it goes, like, $10 says they have something. Or I just overhear them looking at the maps and seeing them talk. It's like, yeah, that was about where that was. Yeah, that's where that was, wasn't it? When we were kids and we heard that thing. So, and then you get to pick up on it. So it's become a safe place for people to share these experiences, and it's becoming a lot more mainstream thanks to podcasts and documentaries and shows and things like that, where people can come to realize you're not the crazy person. It's not a very necessarily a rare thing. There are hundreds of people who see and experience these beings every year, up to 1,000 or more, and that's just the recorded sightings. Those are, again, still the ones that people do still keep to themselves. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think David says that there's maybe a less than 1 to 10% of reports are actually given every year. All the 90 to 99% people just keep to themselves. Probably. So if people would just share more of what they have, it would just be it would be better for other people, so that we would all have a safe place to share these different encounters and experiences, and it might help with some of the puzzle pieces as well.
Yeah. It takes a lot of guts to talk about, an experience like that, and everyone that we've talked to who has had an encounter, it's a way for them to get it off their chest again,
Mm-hmm. It really is.
So yeah, it's amazing when people have these encounters. You had these encounters, it's kind of like a gift in a way, and sometimes it's they want to avoid it at all times of happening again,
Mm-hmm.
But it's awesome. It is really cool. It's such a cool topic to talk about.
It is. It's very interesting, and it's great to get the people's minds going, and especially the children, getting to let them experience, wonder and excitement, that, like I mentioned at the beginning, that there is still things to discover in this world, that
Absolutely.
sometimes maybe what we're being taught every day isn't all of the puzzle pieces to what's going on out here in the world.
Yeah, there's still some amazing wonders out there that we have not discovered yet. But Amanda, thank you so much for coming on here and talking with us. I really appreciate it. Amanda, where can they find you on social media?
So I'm on all social media platforms as Amanda the Bigfoot Lady. That's a nickname that my husband gave me. He tells everybody, he's like, yeah, go find my wife at the Bigfoot Museum. She's the Bigfoot Lady. She'll tell you all about it. So I ran with that nickname on social media. So you can find me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I am working on getting YouTube Shorts up and running with some of my videos. And what started out as just a little fun side project of posting Bigfoot memes and little fun quips about my day-to-day at the Bigfoot Museum has just grown and exploded. So I'm still enjoying the ride of my growing social media. And one of my projects that I'm hoping to take on soon is I'm going to try to do like a Bigfoot facts or Bigfoot 101 on my TikTok and other social media, kind of generating it towards children, like, you know, so where did the name Bigfoot come from? Or what is this sagittal crest? What does that mean? Or what's a mid-tarsal break? All these little quips that you hear, just, you know, kind of your Bigfoot 101. So that's just kind of a fun idea I had recently.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
everybody's like, sounds great. You should do that. I'm like, okay, yes, I'll do it.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah,
That's
man.
great.
Just do it. I love it. And guys, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you check out nicotina.net. That's where you'll find the community for Beyond the Unknown, where you can interact with both Daniel and I. Memberships are available, and it gives you access to all 3 of my channels as well, and to all 3 communities as well. So definitely check out nicotina.net. Amanda, we'll have to do it again sometime. This was great. I had a wonderful time talking to you. And like I said, thank you for coming on, and you have a good night.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, feel free to have me on anytime. I got tons more stories I could share with you anytime.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Oh, yeah. There we go. There we go.
Awesome.
All right, Amanda. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
If you have a story that you would like to share with us on our podcast, please reach out to us at beyondxunknown@gmail.com. Paranormal, unexplained, UFO, or Bigfoot, reach out to us and share your story.